Hello, this is Klaus Jensen presenting a very good game from round 1 of the Aeroflot Open, which is played in these days in Moscow. And what you're about to watch is a very beautiful game played by Anton Koborov, who is rated 2670, and his opponent with the black pieces was Koborov-Vocaturo, rated 2570. So let's get on with the game, which started d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, bishop b4. Now we have a Nimzo engine, which is soon turning into more like a Catalan structure with g3 here. White sacks the pawn on c4 in exchange for more central control. D takes c4, bishop d2, castles, castles, knight c6, a3, bishop e7, and e4. White plays for this center, and black needs to play c5 to disturb white's center, so he plays knight a5 here, bishop e3, and then c5. D takes c5, knight d7, queen e2, bishop takes c5, rook a d1, bishop takes e3, queen takes a3, and queen b6. And on surface this position looks okay for black, but he has a problem with his bishop on c8. It's very difficult for him to develop this bishop because it's blocked by the pawn on e6, and also now the b7 pawn cannot move to b6. So white doesn't want to exchange queens, plays queen e2 instead, knight c5 and knight e5, and this move is of course threatening to take back the sacked pawn, but more likely white has other plans here. But black defends the pawn with queen a6, and now Koborov switches his queen to the king side, and this was probably the real plan behind knight e5. Otherwise he could have put even more pressure on c4 here in this position by playing, for example, rook d4. But queen h5 was what followed, and the threat here is a discovered attack on the knight on c5. And since there also could be problems on f7 in the future as well, it's very understandable that Vocaturo wants to kick the knight from e5 immediately, and therefore he played f6 in this position. And I'm sure that Vocaturo was surprised by the next move from Koborov. It's a very beautiful move, and you might want to pause the video and see if you can find out how Koborov continued this game. You can pause the video here and try to figure it out. The move that Koborov came up with was not the discovered attack knight g6, because this doesn't give much after h takes and queen takes c5 and b6. No, Koborov had something very different in mind. He played the very nice move rook d8. And the rook, it seems like a rook sack, but the rook cannot be taken because rook takes d8, then queen f7 check, king has to go to the corner, queen e7 threatening the rook, bishop d7 and knight f7 check, king g8, and knight takes d8. So Koborov has won back the rook and still has a winning attack. So this was one idea behind the nice move rook d8. The other idea is to be seen after Vocaturo takes the knight on e5, f takes e5. Rook takes f8 check, king takes, and now f4 is forcing an opening of the f-file. And although Koborov is a piece down, he has a very dangerous attack because none of the black pieces are able to support the king. A sample line could be if Vocaturo had tried to play bishop d7 here, then f takes e5 with check, king e7, queen h4 check, king e8, and bishop f3. And now there's a lot of dangerous lines for black, and he will not survive any of them. g6, bishop h5, g takes, and queen f6 would lead to a quick checkmate. So after f4, f takes e5, king e7 has to be played. Bishop d7 wouldn't work here, so king e7 was played. he has to move his king away from danger. F takes e5, king g8, queen g5 check, king c7, queen e7 check, knight d7. And when looking at this position, it's very impressive how Koborov has played the piece sack without any concrete line giving him a win. He has of course calculated this far, and there's no concrete line that will lead to a win here. He has simply played the rook d8 sack on his on intuition, and that makes it even more impressive. King h1, king b8. Now the rook in the corner is not worth much at this point. Bishop h3, queen c6, bishop takes e6, a6, rook f7, knight b6, bishop d5. And here if queen h6 for example, then a queen exchange will come, and white will have two connected passed pawns, and this is in fact also what happens in the game after knight takes d5 and e takes d5. And this is of course also looking very dangerous for black with these two passed pawns in the center. Queen b6, e6, king a7, queen b4. And now Koborov has nothing against the queen exchange, and Vocaturo accepts it. And then rook takes g7, knight d4, and rook takes h7. And now the advantage has transformed from a dangerous attack to a winning endgame because of all the kingside pawns. And Vocaturo decides that he wants to give up his knight for two of those pawns, so knight takes e6, d takes, and bishop takes e6, and king g1. And now Koborov is only one pawn up, but still with good chances of winning because of the two connected pawns on the king side. Rook d8, rook e7, bishop h3, king f2, rook d6, rook e4, rook d2 check, rook e2, and if rook takes e2 here, then of course king takes e2, and then planning king f3 and g4 and so on would be winning for white, so Vocaturo has to play rook d6 instead, king e3, and now Vocaturo gives a few checks on e6 and on f6 and again on e6 and on d6, and then Koborov can block with the knight, bishop e6, rook e5 defending the knight, b6 and h4, and the remaining moves in the game are only of academical interest because this is clearly a winning endgame for white. The game continued a few more moves: king b7, king e4, king c6, knight f4, bishop g4, rook d5, rook f6, h5, b5, rook g5, bishop d1, rook g6, bishop c2 check, king e5, rook takes, and h takes. And in this position Vocaturo finally gave up, resigned the game, and I believe that this was a fantastic game. The beautiful rook d8 played on intuition rather than concrete lines was surely one of the best moves I've seen for a long time. And I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did, and I hope to see you on my blog at klausjensen.com. Bye bye for now.